If you've been scrolling through endless rows of projectors, watching endless best for gaming and best for movies videos, and you still feel stuck on which box actually gives you the experience you need, this review is here to cut through the noise. You're probably wondering whether a short-throw laser projector is worth the extra cost, if it can really handle a bright living room, and whether the trade-offs it brings are worth the hype. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at the Optoma GT2100HDR, the thing that caught my eye was the promise of a compact, short-throw design that could sit just a foot or two from the wall and still throw a 100-inch image. That's the kind of flexibility you need when you don't have a dedicated home theater room but still want a cinematic feel on a typical living room wall. The other headline that kept coming up was the 200 lumen brightness, which sounds massive on paper, but the real test is whether that light actually cuts through daylight and ambient light without washing out colors. I set up the GT2100HDR in my own apartment, where the main wall gets a decent amount of natural light in the late afternoon. The first thing I noticed is how quick the installation is. Because it's a short-throw unit, I could place the projector on a small shelf just under the TV stand, and with a quick turn of the lens focus, I had a 100-inch image filling the wall while keeping the space tidy. The external power supply is a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand it keeps the projector itself lighter and cooler, but on the other hand you end up with an extra cable that runs from the unit to the wall outlet. In my setup that meant a little extra planning to hide the power brick behind the furniture, but it's not a deal breaker unless you're looking for a completely wire-free aesthetic. Now, about that brightness. I ran a quick side-by-side test with a 1080p Blu-ray movie in the evening, when the room lights were dimmed to a comfortable level. The image was vivid, with deep blacks and colors that felt punchy rather than pastel. When I flipped the lights on to a typical daytime setting, just the overhead LED fixture and the windows open, the picture stayed surprisingly readable. The 4200 lumens really do help push a decent image in a lit environment, although you'll still notice some loss in contrast compared to a dark room. If you're planning to watch movies in a fully dark home theater, you'll get the best contrast, but if you're looking for a flexible solution that can handle family movie nights with the lights on, the GT2100HDR delivers a respectable compromise. Gaming was another real-world scenario I put it through. The projector supports a 4K HDR input, which means you can feed it a 4K signal from a modern console, and the laser engine does a good job of preserving the HDR highlights without adding lag. I ran a fast-paced first-person shooter at 1080p, and there was no noticeable input lag, nothing that would throw off a competitive player. The short-throw nature also means the throw distance stays consistent even when you move the couch a foot or two closer, so you don't have to keep readjusting focus mid-session. However, one practical limitation shows up when you try to push the image beyond about 120 inches. The projector's native 1080p resolution starts to stretch a bit, and fine detail becomes softer, which is something a true 4K projector would handle better. For most gamers playing at 1080p or using upscaled 4K content, this isn't a huge issue, but if you're a pixel purist who wants the absolute sharpest image at large sizes, you might feel the ceiling. The eco-friendly design is more than a marketing tagline. Optoma uses a sealed laser light source that's rated for around 30,000 hours, meaning you won't be swapping lamps every couple of years. The laser also stays cooler than a traditional bulb, which translates to quieter operation, something you'll notice when you're trying to hear subtle audio cues in a game or a quiet dialogue scene. The downside is that the unit doesn't have a built-in speaker system that's strong enough for a full home theater experience, so you'll still need a separate sound setup. If you're already invested in a soundbar or a surround sound system, that's fine, but for someone expecting an all-in-one package, you'll need to budget extra. Who should consider buying the GT2100HDR? If you live in a small apartment or a house where a dedicated media room isn't feasible, and you want a projector that can sit on a bookshelf or a low cabinet without casting a long shadow, this model fits the bill. It's also a solid match for gamers who want low input lag, HDR support, and a bright image that works with the lights on. Families who watch movies together in a bright living room will appreciate the high lumens, and the laser light source means you won't be dealing with frequent bulb replacements.